January 8th, 1956. The Curaray River, eastern Ecuador. 5 American men wade onto a strip of sand they have named Palm Beach. They carry no weapons. Overhead, their small yellow plane banks once and climbs away. Jim Elliott checks his watch. It reads 4:30 in the afternoon. Nate Saint keys his radio and tells his wife everything is calm. He signs off with a plan to call again at 4:30 the next day. That call never comes. The 5 men are missionaries: Jim Elliott, Nate Saint, Ed McCulley, Roger Udarian, and Peter Fleming. For months they have circled the jungle below in Saint's Piper cruiser, lowering gifts on a long cable to a people the outside world calls Aucas, a Quechua word meaning savages. The people call themselves Waorani. No outsider has ever made peaceful contact and survived. 3 of the men are barely 30 years old. 2 have young children. All 5 believe the Waorani deserve to hear the gospel in their own language, spoken by someone who does not come to take their land. The operation has a name: Operation Auca. It begins in September of 1955, when Nate Saint spots a Waorani settlement from the air. For 10 weeks, the men drop machetes, pots, and photographs of themselves from the plane, circling low so the villagers can see their faces are not hostile. By January, 3 Waorani approach the beach and accept gifts by hand. One young woman rides in the plane with Saint, laughing at the engine noise. It feels to the men below like a door swinging open. On January 3rd, the 5 build a treehouse camp above Palm Beach and wait. Each night, they radio their wives in Shell Mira, a missionary outpost 80 miles away. Elizabeth Elliott, Jim's wife, keeps the log. Marge Saint, Nate's wife, mans the radio. On January 6th, the same 3 Waorani return, along with a 4th, and share fish and yucca with the missionaries. Elliott writes in his journal that contact seems near. He does not know a group of Waorani men, alarmed by rumors that the visitors are cannibals sent to steal children, are already moving toward the river. On the morning of January 8th, the missionaries spot a larger group approaching through the trees. 10 Waorani men and women, including 2 who had visited before, walk onto the sand. For a few minutes, there is calm exchange. Then, before the men in the plane could transmit a warning, spears were thrown. Nate Saint fires a pistol into the air, a signal the group had agreed on only as a warning, never to be aimed at a person. It makes no difference. Within minutes, all 5 missionaries lie dead on the beach they had named for peace. At Shell Mira, Marge Saint waits by the radio through the evening of January 8th, then through the morning of January 9th. No call comes. She notifies the US Army and Air Force, both of which maintain rescue units in the region. A search plane, piloted by a missionary pilot named Johnny Keenan, flies low over Palm Beach on January 9th. Keenan spots the yellow Piper cruiser, its fabric stripped from the wings by spears, resting empty on the sand. There is no sign of the 5 men. A ground search party, made up of American servicemen and Ecuadorian soldiers, reaches the beach on January 10th. They find 4 bodies in the river, weighted down and speared, and locate Ed McCulley's body further downstream. Peter Fleming's body is recovered last. The men are buried where they fell, under a wooden cross the search party builds from driftwood. Word of the killings reaches Life magazine within days. A photographer named Cornell Kappa had travelled with the search party, and his photographs of the wreckage and the graves run across 10 pages, making Palm Beach known to millions of Americans who had never heard the word Waorani before that week. What the wider world does not yet know is what the 5 widows do next. Elizabeth Elliot, left alone with a 10-month-old daughter, does not leave Ecuador. Neither does Marge Saint, nor Nate's sister Rachel, who had been studying the Waorani language for years before the killings. In October of 1958, less than 3 years after the spearing on the beach, Rachel Saint and Elizabeth Elliot walk into a Waorani settlement and begin to live among the very people responsible for the deaths of their husband and brother. They are received. A Waorani woman named Dayuma, who had left the tribe years earlier and befriended Rachel Saint at a hacienda, returns with them and vouches for their intentions. Elizabeth Elliot stays 2 years, raising her daughter Valerie inside a Waorani village, learning a language that had never been written down. Rachel Saint remains for decades, eventually helping translate the New Testament into the Waorani tongue. Among the men who welcomed them is Min Kai, one of the warriors who had thrown a spear on Palm Beach in 1956. He will later say he did not know at the time what a book or a god was, only that the strangers on the beach had not fought back. By the late 1960s, killing within the tribe, once so common that Waorani elders estimated most violent deaths came at the hands of other Waorani, drops sharply in the villages where the missionaries settle. Min Kai is baptized. So is another of the men who speared Nate Saint. In 1994, Nate Saint's son Steve, who had visited the Waorani as a boy, returns to live among them as an adult. Min Kai becomes like a grandfather to Steve's children. In the 2000s, Min Kai travels to the United States and stands on stage beside Steve Saint, telling church audiences through a translator about the day on the beach he still remembers in detail. Rachel Saint dies in Ecuador in 1994 and is buried among the Waorani at her own request on land she had lived on for over 30 years. Elizabeth Elliot returns to the United States, writes several books about her husband and the mission, and remarries twice before her death in 2015. The wooden cross the search party built on Palm Beach in January of 1956 is long gone, worn away by river and weather. But the site is still marked today by the people who once called it a killing ground, and now call it the place the door opened. Of the 5 men who waded onto that sand in January of 1956, not one lived to see what came after. The 4 widows they left behind did.